Welcome to my channel. Let us look to Unit 9, Introduction to Measures of Central Tendency.
9.1 Introduction. Suppose you have data, for instance, marks in psychology obtained by students in 12th standard, and you want to analyze it statistically. What statistical techniques will you employ? You can of course organize the data with the help of classification and tabulation that we discussed in the previous unit, and the data can also be graphically represented. But if you want to further analyze the data, then you can compute the average marks obtained by the whole class, or find the midpoint for marks above and below which will lie half of the students, or you can also find out most frequent marks obtained by the students. The techniques you are employing here are mean, median, and mode. These are called measures of central tendency and can be categorized under descriptive statistics. In the previous unit, we discussed about classification, tabulation, and also graphical representations of data. In the present unit, we will discuss the measures of central tendency, viz. mean, median, and mode. We will not only understand what these techniques are, but will also focus on their properties, advantages, and limitations. Further, we will also learn how to compute mean, median, and mode for ungrouped and grouped data. 9.2 Concept of central tendency of data. Measures of central tendency provides a single value that indicates the general magnitude of the data, and this single value provides information about the characteristics of the data by identifying the value at or near the central location of the data. Bordens and Abbott, 2011. King and Minium, 2013, described measures of central tendency as a summary figure that helps in describing a central location for a certain group of scores. Tate, 1955, page 78. Defined measures of central tendency as a sort of average or typical value of the items in the series, and its function is to summarize the series in terms of this average value. The main functions of measures of central tendency are as follows. 1. They provide a summary figure with the help of which the central location of the whole data can be explained. When we compute an average of a certain group, we get an idea about the whole data. 2. Large amount of data can be easily reduced to a single figure. Mean, median, and mode can be computed for a large data, and a single figure can be derived. 3. When mean is computed for a certain sample, it will help gauge the population mean. 4. The results obtained from computing measures of central tendency will help in making certain decisions. This holds true not only to decisions with regard to research, but could have applications in varied areas like policymaking, marketing, and sales, and so on. 5. Comparison can be carried out based on single figures computed with the help of measures of central tendency. For example, with regard to performance of students in mathematics test, the mean marks obtained by girls and the mean marks obtained by boys can be compared. A good measure of central tendency needs to have the following characteristics. 1. The definition of the central tendency needs to be adequately specified and should be clear. It should not be subject to varied interpretations and needs to be unaffected by any individual bias. The definition should be rigid so that a stable value is obtained that represents the data. 2. The measure of central tendency should be easy to understand and easy to compute. It should not involve elaborate mathematical calculations. 3. For the value obtained from the computation of measures of central tendency to be representative of the data, the whole data needs to be computed. 4. The data needs to be collected from a sample that truly represents the population. The sample thus needs to be randomly selected. 5. The measure of central tendency needs to display sampling stability and should not be affected by any fluctuations in the sample. For example, if two different researchers obtain a representative sample from a same population, the means computed by them for their respective samples should display least variation. 6. The measure of central tendency should not be affected by outliers. Outliers are extreme values in data or distribution. 7. The measure of central tendency should render itself to further mathematical computations. Nine point three Different measures of central tendency. As the concept of central tendency is now clear, we will now proceed to discuss the three measures of central tendency. The three measures of central tendency that we will be discussing are 1. Mean or arithmetic mean. 2. Median. 3. Mode. In this section of the unit, we will try to understand these concepts, and then in the next section we will be focusing on the properties, advantages, and limitations of each of these measures. 9.3.1 Mean or arithmetic mean. Mean for sample is denoted by symbol m or x bar, and mean for population is denoted by micro, mu. It is one of the most commonly used measures of central tendency and is often referred to as average. It can also be termed as one of the most sensitive measure of central tendency, as all the scores in a data are taken into consideration when it is computed. Bordens and Abbott, 2011. Further statistical techniques can be computed based on mean, thus making it even more useful. Mean is a total of all the scores in data divided by the total number of scores. For example, if there are 100 students in a class and we want to find mean or average marks obtained by them in a psychology test, we will add all their marks and divide by 100, that is the number of students, to obtain mean. 9.3.2 Median is a point in any distribution below and above which lie half of the scores. Median is also referred to as P50, King and Minium, 2008. The symbol for median is MD. As stated by Bordens and Abbott, 2011, page 411, median is the middle score in an ordered distribution. If we take the example discussed earlier of the marks obtained by 100 students in a psychology test, these marks are to be arranged in an order, either ascending or descending. The middle score in this distribution is then identified as median. Though this would seem easy for an odd number of scores, in case of even number of scores a certain procedure is followed that will be discussed when we learn how to compute median later in this unit. Mode is denoted by symbol MO. Mode is the score in a distribution that occurs most frequently. Taking the example of the marks obtained by a group of 100 students in psychology test discussed earlier, if out of these 100 students, 10 students obtain 35 marks. 35 is thus most frequently occurring value and will be termed as mode. Certain distributions can be bimodal as well, where there are two modes. For instance, if there were other 10 students in this group of 100 students, who secured 47 marks, 47 is the value that is occurring as frequently as 35 and thus, will be termed as mode along with 35. In a similar way, when there are three modes, the term used is trimodal, and when there are four or more modes, we use the term multimodal. Though if the scores in a distribution greatly vary, then it is possible that there is no mode. Mode as such does not provide an adequate characterization of the distribution because it just takes into consideration the most frequent scores and other scores are not considered. How to choose a measure of central tendency? The choice of a measure of central tendency will depend on, first of all, the scales of measurement that we discussed in the first unit. For nominal scales, one can compute mode but not mean or median. For example, in case of males and females, the males can be coded as 1 and females can be coded as 2, or vice versa. In such a case, we can compute frequently occurring score that will provide us information whether there are more males or more females. However, it is not possible to compute mean or median. With regard to ordinal scale, median or mode can be used. For example, if we rank the students based on their performance in mathematics test, it is possible to find median below and above which lie half of the ranks. Mode can also be computed if more than one student gets same rank. With regard to interval scale and ratio scale, mean can be computed. Yet another aspect that is important while making a choice with regard to which measure of central tendency to use is whether the data is normally distributed or not. If the data is normally distributed, we will compute mean, and if it is not normally distributed, we will compute median or mode. This is because mean may not adequately represent the data when the data is not normally distributed. We will discuss normal distribution in detail in the last unit, Unit 8 of this course. 9.4 Properties, advantages and limitations of mean, median and mode. Let us now discuss the properties, advantages and limitations of mean, median and mode. 9.4.1 Properties of mean. 1. Mean is sensitive to the actual position of each and every score in a distribution, and if another score is included in the distribution, then the mean or average of that distribution will change. For example, mean of the scores 5, 4, 6, 3, 2 is 4. We got the value 4 by adding 5 plus 4 plus 6 plus 3 plus 2 equals 20 and then dividing it by 5. That is the total number of scores, n. But if we change the scores to 5, 4, 6, 3, 2, 8, the mean will be 4.67. We got the value 4.67 by adding 5 plus 4 plus 6 plus 3 plus 2 plus 8 equals 28 and then dividing it by 6. That is the total number of scores, n. Statistical Methods I. 166. 2. Mean denotes a balance point of any distribution, and the total of positive deviations from the mean is equal to the negative deviations from the mean. King and Minium, 2008. 3. Mean is especially effective when we want the measure of central tendency to reflect the sum of the scores. 9.4.2 Advantages of mean. 1. The definition of mean is rigid, which is a quality of a good measure of central tendency. 2. It is not only easy to understand but also easy to calculate. 3. All the scores in the distribution are considered when mean is computed. 4. Further mathematical calculations can be carried out on the basis of mean. 5. Fluctuations in sampling are least likely to affect mean. 9.4.3 Limitations of mean. 1. Outliers or extreme values can have an impact on mean. 2. When there are open-ended classes, such as 10 and above or below 5, mean cannot be computed. In such cases, median and mode can be computed. This is mainly because in such distributions midpoint cannot be determined to carry out calculations. 3. If a score in the data is missing or lost or not clear, then mean cannot be computed unless mean is computed for rest of the data by not considering the lost score and dropping it altogether. 4. It is not possible to determine mean through inspection. Further, it cannot be determined based on a graph. 5. It is not suitable for data that is skewed or is very asymmetrical, as then in such cases mean will not adequately represent the data. 9.4.4 Properties of median 1. When compared to mean, median is less sensitive to extreme scores or outliers. 2. When a distribution is skewed or is asymmetrical, median can be adequately used. 3. When a distribution is open-ended, that is, actual score at one end of the distribution is not known, then median can be computed. 9.4.5 Advantages of median 1. The definition of median is rigid, which is a quality of a good measure of central tendency. 2. It is easy to understand and calculate. 3. It is not affected by outliers or extreme scores in data. Introduction to measures of central tendency. 167. 4. Unless the median falls in an open-ended class, it can be computed for group data with open-ended classes. 5. In certain cases it is possible to identify median through inspection as well as graphically. 9.4.6 Limitations of median 1. Some statistical procedures using median are quite complex. Computation of median can be time-consuming when large data is involved because the data needs to be arranged in an order before median is computed. 2. Median cannot be computed exactly when an ungrouped data is even. In such cases, median is estimated as mean of the scores in the middle of the distribution. 3. It is not based on each and every score in the distribution. 4. It can be affected by sampling fluctuations and thus can be termed as less stable than mean. 9.4.7 Properties of Mode 1. Mode can be used with variables that can be measured on nominal scale. 2. Mode is easier to compute than mean and median. But it is not used often. Because of lack of stability from one sample to another, and also because a single set of data may possibly have more than one mode. Also, when there are more than one mode, then the modes cannot be termed to adequately measure central location. 3. Mode is not affected by outliers or extreme scores. 9.4.8 Advantages of Mode 1. It is not only easy to comprehend and calculate, but it can also be determined by mere inspection. 2. It can be used with quantitative as well as qualitative data. 3. It is not affected by outliers or extreme scores. 4. Even if a distribution has one or more than one open-ended classes, mode can easily be computed. 9.4. 9 Limitations of Mode 1. It is sometimes possible that the scores in the data vary from each other. And in such cases the data may have no mode. 2. Mode cannot be rigidly defined. 3. In case of bimodal, trimodal or multimodal distribution, interpretation and comparison becomes difficult. 4. Mode is not based on the whole distribution. 5. It may not be possible to compute further mathematical procedures based on mode.
So far, Unit 9, all the definitions and all the core part of readouts is complete, and 9.5 is left out, which is mostly calculations, computation part, which I will be dealing in a separate video. You can see that there are a lot of computational parts, a lot of problems to be solved, and I will deal in a separate video. Okay, and so far this unit is about to end here in this video. I will just read out the last part, the summing up part.
9.6 Let us sum up. In the present unit, we discussed the concept of central tendency. The measures of central tendency was explained as summary figures that help in describing a central location for a certain group of scores. It was further explained as providing information about the characteristics of the data by identifying the value at or near the central location of the data. The functions of measures of central tendency besides the characteristics of good measures of central tendency were also discussed. Further, the unit focused on the three measures of central tendency, namely, mean, median and mode. Mean is a total of all the scores in data divided by the total number of scores. It is one of the most frequently used measure of central tendency and is often referred to as an average. It can also be termed as one of the most sensitive measure of central. Statistical Methods I. 178. Tendency is all the scores in a data are taken into consideration when it is computed. Median is the middle score in an ordered distribution. Median is a point in any distribution below and above which lie half of the scores. Mode is the score in a distribution that occurs most frequently. Certain distributions are bimodal, where there are two modes. When there are three modes, the term used is trimodal, and when there are four or more modes, we use the term multimodal. Though, if the scores in a distribution greatly vary, then it is possible that there is no mode. The properties, advantages, and limitations of mean, median, and mode were also discussed in detail. Further, the computation of each of these measures of central tendency was also discussed for both ungrouped and grouped data with stepwise explanation.
So here we are at the end of Unit 9. I hope you all have got what I am planning and working for. I just want you to easily read the book, even if you are away from your book, or maybe while you are traveling on the bus to the exam center. You may not be able to read the book, but you can, if it would be good, right, to listen to the book, right? And hopefully I am helping you out in your exams. uh, yeah, one small thing you can do for me is like my video, and if you have not subscribed to my video, please press that button. Thank you for taking the time to listening to my videos and liking my videos. Thank you.